Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another GINSA weekly update on the war in Gaza. I'm Blaise Mishtal, GINSA's Vice President for Policy, and I'm honored to be joined again by Major General Yaakov Amidror, former National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister of Israel and a distinguished fellow here at GINSA. As always, we appreciate you joining, and I encourage you to check out ginsa.org for all the latest analysis and updates on the war and related ongoings. In just the last couple of days, and including today, we've had briefs discussing the beginning of Israel's limited operation in Rafah and forthcoming briefs talking about the possibility of ICC arrest warrants against Israeli officials and the news that the United States might be delaying or suspending delivery of some weapons to Israel. All topics that I'm looking forward to covering with General Amidror this afternoon. So, General Amidror, a lot has happened in the last several days, but I thought perhaps we could start with Rafah and the beginnings of a limited military operation there. If you could fill us in on where and why Israel has been active around Rafah, what the goals of this operation are, and what might come next.
First off, thank you very much for having me. It's really crucial days. We said all the time that we have to go into Rafah because we believe that we should finish the job of dismantling the military capabilities of Hamas. And now the only anchor of these capabilities, which still exist, is in Rafah. It's a brigade with 4 battalions. It was not the strongest force of Hamas, but now after we succeeded to dismantle the other brigade, and we have only 2 battalions in the refugee camps at the center. The only brigade which still exists and had been touched by us is in Rafah. And I think, this is my assessment, there are much more terrorists there than before the war because many of the terrorists retreated from the north and from the center into the Rafah area. So we probably will find there more terrorists than had been there at the beginning. The whole operation was postponed because we negotiated through the Americans, the Qataris, and the Egyptians with Hamas about releasing hostages, and it didn't move. They say no to all the offers which had been on the table, including the one which was raised by the Americans and the Qataris. And we decided to move in, and surprisingly, the day that we begin to move the population, a day after we begin to move the population, the civilian populations from Rafah, the Hamas put another offer on the table. And if someone still didn't believe that only military pressure will change the attitude of Hamas towards the hostages, here is it's clear why it happened. They tried to stop the operation a few hours before before the tanks crossed the border, after we begin to push the population from the east part of Rafah. And the decision here was that we will continue. And now we are negotiating parallel to our fight in Rafah, surprisingly, against all odds. And we had been, advised by many experts from all around the world that will blow the negotiations. On the contrary, that is the only action which brought back the Hamas into the negotiating table. So this is relating to the hostages. The other issue, which is surprising, at least for me, is the fact that the Americans change their attitude. They begin to threat to stop the flow of the munition into Israel, because they want to stop us from entering into Rafah, counter to what was declared by the president at the beginning, that he's supporting to destroy Hamas, that Israel should destroy Hamas. Here, it's clear. What the Americans are trying to do is to stop us from destroying Hamas. The excuse is the civilians around Rafah, but we told everyone we will not fight there before we will move all these civilians out of the battlefield. And we succeeded to make the first step for doing it. Now, I'm not sure that it will be so easy, because when the Palestinians understand that the United States of America is not supporting this step, that might stay and say Israel will not act against the will of the United States of America. I mean, it's another obstacle which contributed by the attitude of the administration. From the pure Israeli security point of view, it's clear we should do it. Now, should we do it now when we are negotiating with the Palestinians? Probably not. We have to wait to the end of the negotiations. If the negotiations will be ended with the process of releasing hostages, we will pause. From our point of view, it's crucial, but we understand that here we have to make kind of an arrangement with the Americans. It will take time, it will postpone it, with or without the hostages. At the beginning, the Americans connected the ceasefire with the release of the hostages. Now, at least for me, it's not clear if it is still connected in the eyes of the administration or not. From the Israeli point of view, we should do it. We have to destroy the whole military capability of Hamas. And as Benny Gantz said, when you have a fire, you don't take out 80% of the fire and you say, the other 20%, it's only 20%. No, it's the beginning of the new fire. And this is why it's so crucial for us. We cannot let Hamas to regroup in Gaza. And the prerequisite for this implementation, this demand, is to destroy all its military capability and the line of command, the capabilities to command and control. And that can be done only if we will go into Rafah. So this is the situation. The IDF began the operation in two different efforts. One is going in the south part of Rafah, in the what we are calling Philadelphia corridor. It's to separate Rafah from the border with Egypt. And we did it till the Rafah Pass, which is the third part of the corridor, and to push in the east and to begin to erode the ability of Hamas to defend itself in Gaza by entering slowly to the outer part of the Rafah defensive system. So we are at the beginning of operation in the east, and we reach the Rafah Pass in the south, and that's open for the IDF tactically. 2 different or 3 different options how to go into Rafah itself. So this is the situation in the south.
So, General, going back to something you said about whether Israel should and will fight while negotiations are ongoing with Palestinians, with Hamas. You mentioned that obviously the beginning of this operation created some pressure on Hamas to respond with a counteroffer. But does that mean that you think that this is sort of merely where Israel is going to stop for now, having entered into the eastern and southern parts around Rafah, or is this going to be the prelude to a bigger operation into Rafah now, while negotiations are still ongoing?
It very much depends on what will happen in the negotiations. If the negotiations will be ended tomorrow, day after, with no results, that will be the beginning of a big operation. The units are already there. If that will be ended with continuation of negotiations, more flexibility of Hamas, and they will be ready to give up part of their ridiculous demands, it might lead to a situation in which is only a partial operation, and it will take time before we will resume.
Can you give us some insight into where the differences now are between the counteroffer that Hamas made and what Israel wants to see in an acceptable deal?
There are three areas in which I understand there are differences. I'm not familiar with all the details. In Israel, the team which is negotiating is keeping all the cards near its chest, and they don't speak about it. And if they speak with someone, he will not speak out what he was told. The first difference is about the number of live hostages that we will get. Hamas saying it will be 33, including bodies. We don't agree. It should be alive hostages. The second one is, well, when they begin the whole process and the ceasefire. Hamas wants a week in which he's getting ceasefire and Israel redeployment and so on and so forth, and only then begin to release the hostages. We will not agree to that. I mean, if they want something, they have to release the hostages. And then is the issue how much they will get and when, vis-a-vis the tensions on the ground that is the IDF. And there is the basic issue that Israel is not ready. So to give any promise or any guarantee or any hint that that will be the end of the war. This process is leading to the end of the war. We don't want to give it because we want to be sure that we will have the ability to go back after the pause and to continue to dismantle Hamas. It's a red line that I don't see anyone in Israel which is ready to cross. I mean, within the government. In Israel, probably there are some people who will, but in the government, I don't see anyone who is ready to cross these red lines.
Is there a timeline for negotiations, or is there a danger that Hamas will keep dragging them on if they think that this is a way to keep Rafah from happening?
That's what happened in the past, and a week ago we said, okay, guys, you have a week, and we begin to move the population after a week. So I believe that if they try to do the same, our reaction will be the same, to limit the process.
But there isn't a specific deadline that has been put on negotiations as of right now?
Not yet.
If I could return to the operation in Rafah for just a second, can you tell us more about the process of evacuating civilians, and is it proceeding as the IDF planned?
Yes, we are calling the population. There are leaflets with maps and number of blocks that in a known map to the other side, which we are calling to evacuate. And we designated a new area for as a safety area, which is north of Khan Younis, not north, west of Khan Younis, and some areas which were part of the battlefield around Khan Younis, and that was designated as safe haven for the population. They know the place, they know they have the map, and they can move to those places. And they know that if they don't fire from within the safe designated areas, Israel do not strike them.
Do you have an estimate of how many civilians have moved or are in the process of moving?
The numbers are around 250,000.
And looking at the limited operation that Israel has conducted thus far, you mentioned that part of it was to the south of Rafah to take the Rafa border crossing. was that something that's been coordinated with Israel? I'm sorry, with Egypt, or are there further actions being taken to try to secure that border, or is it just the crossing itself?
No, we don't coordinate with the Egyptians. We inform the Egyptians, the chief of staff and the head of the Shabak visited Egypt, I think 2 weeks ago, something like that, to inform the Egyptians about our plan without any specific day of implementing it. I think what bothered the Egyptians more than everything is the attempt by Palestinians to cross the border to the other side. They don't want the Palestinians in Egypt. They despise the Palestinians. They're afraid from Hamas, and they don't want the terrorism coming in through Hamas members into Egypt. They're very sensitive to that. And the more that they will see that we are pushing and moving the population to north of the border, not to south of Rafah, they will be more comfort. They have more comfort in their actions.
And is Israel in the Philadelphia corridor, or is on the Gaza side, on the Rafah side of the border? Where's
Just
the
in the
IDF
Rafah,
operating exactly?
just in the Palestinian side of the border. We are not going into the Egyptian side. It's a sovereign state for Egypt, and we will secure it. We are not going to cross the border.
There is some reporting that there is a plan by Israel to hand control of the Rafa crossing over to a private security firm. Do you have any further details about this, or know if it's accurate?
I read it. I don't have any information about it.
I would note for our listeners that if that is the case, that very much parallels recommendations that joint JINSA and Vandenberg coalition task force made in our the day after report, looking at what a post-Hamas Gaza would look like. So particular interest to us. But maybe now, General, turning to this more thorny topic of the reports of the U.S. suspending some weapons deliveries to Israel. There's reports here in the U.S. that there's various types of weapons that might be involved, from tank rounds to JDAMs, joint direct attack munitions, or other precision guided weapons. Do you have any more information about what has been delayed, or how many weapons are being affected by this delay?
Up till now, the effect is not a huge one. It's very limited, but if it is at the beginning of a new phenomena, it's very devastating from our point of view. And for me personally, very surprising, because, as I said, it contradicts the announcement of the president at the beginning of the war. Because we didn't hear from the Americans any new idea how should we do the process of dismantling the military capability of Hamas in Rafah, which is different from what we had in mind and what we planned. No one in the American side has any good new idea, creative one, as people like to say. Think out of the box when they don't know what the box is. Or creative means that you don't have what to offer and you just call names to something which is not creative and not helpful. We didn't hear anything from the American professionally that might help us to have another kind of operation. We will be more than happy to learn, but up till now, we didn't. And there is no any easy way to do it in Rafah. So either you give immunity to Hamas in Rafah, and you say, because of that, A, B, C, D, doesn't matter, you don't go to Rafah. Or you say, no immunity to Hamas. We will destroy its military capabilities. And it's not easy, it's complicated, we have some limitations, we have to make some pre-operation steps. Everything is okay. But at the end, this is the only way to dismantle the military capability of Hamas, and this is the goal of the war, and we will do it. I hope.
Are there specific conditions that the U.S. is putting in place to restore supply of weapons, or is this merely a warning sign that they're sending? How do you interpret this, and do you think it can be resolved
I
if
think that at
Israel
the
is in fact going into Rafah?
I think that at the moment it's kind of telling Israel, guys, be careful. This is the beginning. We can be even more mean than that. But at the end, Israel is a sovereign state, and we will have to take into consideration the advice of the administration, but to make the decision by ourselves. And from the military analysis, it's clear it should be done. It's the only way to ensure and to guarantee the destroying of the military capability of Hamas. This is the last. It's the Alamo of Hamas, and that should be dismantled. Again, the decision makers will have to take into account the American warning and to think what it was and what should be done. I'm very much surprised by this action, by the way. Very much.
What would the strategic and operational implications be if the U.S. were to, in fact, stop its supply of offensive weapons, particularly PGMs for Israel?
The shortage will be immediately, will have immediately consequences in the battlefield. We will use stupid bombs. More Israelis will be killed and more Palestinians will be killed, because the more precise weapon you use, the effectiveness is greater, and your ability to minimize the collateral damage is better. If you don't have it and you use the stupid bombs, of course the effectivity will be reduced, so more Israelis will be killed, and the ability to maintain and to mitigate the collateral damage will be decreased. So the same result, more Palestinians will be killed. So it doesn't have any benefit for both sides, not for the Palestinians and not for us. And I don't understand this step, by the way.
So it seems that if the U.S. administration is concerned about potential civilian casualties in the Rafah operation, it's actually going to cause more by cutting off the supply of these weapons to Israel.
Yeah. No question. If we decide to continue, in spite the warning of the Americans, the fact that we have less accurate weapon system will reduce the efficiency. And the meaning of reducing the efficiency is more Israelis will be killed and more Palestinians will be killed.
Well, let me invite members of our audience, if they have any questions, that they can pose them using the Q&A feature in Zoom. But before we turn to those, General, I wanted to ask you about recent developments in the north, particularly a statement today from Defense Minister Gallant that said it might be a hot summer in Lebanon. How are things developing in the north, and what was Minister Gallant referring to?
We give the whole space to offer and to achieve diplomatic agreement. Efforts are done now by both the French and the Americans. And we hope that agreement will be achieved by both of them, because it's not the interest of Israel to go for another war. But we might be in a situation in which we don't have any other option. There are between 60 to 80,000 Israelis refugees in Israel. They had been evacuated from the north or evacuated themselves from the north because of the fire of which had been launched by Hezbollah. By the way, the hypocrisy of the world, no one says something about that. I mean, okay, between us and Hamas there is a war, and you know the both sides arguments. But what is the excuse of Hezbollah, of Lebanon, to launch rockets, missiles, and anti-tank missiles into Israel? Or how it is connected? It's a sovereign state that's supposed to do something which will not violate the sovereignty of another state, in this case Israel. So at the end, we might find ourselves in a situation in which we don't have any other choice, and we will have to go to a big war with the Hezbollah. It will be a devastating one, by the way. Think about the situation in which areas in Lebanon will be locked like Gaza, and the number of the casualties on the other side will be huge. Why it is so devastating? Because Hamas is storing, I don't know, between 30 to 50% of its missiles and rockets under big buildings in all Lebanon, from Beirut down to South Lebanon and to the Bekaa Valley. Think about the basement with 2 missiles, which will be bombed by a quarter of a ton of TNT from one of our Air Force plane, F-16 or F-15, doesn't matter. The combination of our TNT and the TNT of those 2 missiles and the fuel of these 2 missiles will be exploded under a building in which there are, I don't know, 20 or 70 families, and none of them will escape. And we don't have any other choice but to neutralize this capability if we know about it. I remember that I showed a picture of missiles and rockets in the basement of a civilian house in Beirut to the Secretary of the United Nations when I was the National Security Advisor. And I asked, so, Mr. Secretary, it's the United Nations view, what should we do? This missile will be launched into Tel Aviv and this to Haifa. What should we do if they don't be neutralized? He didn't have an answer. The highest representative of the Red Cross didn't have an answer as well. He said it's a legitimate target, but we cannot tell you what to do and not what to do. The truth is that everyone is lecturing us what not to do, but very few are telling us what we can do. And I'm telling you, we will do whatever we can to neutralize these missiles and rockets that we know about, and the result will be devastating for Lebanon, not less than Gaza. So the Lebanese will have to make a choice. I'm not sure that we will initiate the war, but we might find ourselves in this corner, and we will have to.
Thank you, General. Let me turn to questions from the audience, starting with one from Jack Kraft. Maybe it's time that Israel build its own manufacturing facilities to create the armaments needed. If Israel can't depend on the U.S., then can Israel depend on anyone?
For the second question, it's clear. There is no any substitute to the United States of America in the world for us. And yes, it's well understood. We will have to make huge effort to manufacture much more than what we are manufacturing today. Economically, it's very stupid. It's much cheaper to buy it in America. But after this lesson that we learned by the restrictions of the Americans, we will not have any other choice. And Israel will take the burden upon itself, and Israel will manufacture in the few years ahead much more than we are manufacturing today.
Eric Passman asks, has the Rafa operation provided any information on the whereabouts of the hostages?
I don't know. This is kind of intelligence that no one in Israel will tell anyone.
Sticking with the Rafa operation and perhaps combining 2 questions, one from Stuart Sloan and one from David Gedold. How does taking the Rafa border help prevent arms and other supplies for Hamas coming through the tunnels from Egypt, and is Israel planning on destroying those tunnels?
The answer is yes and yes. It is clear that if we expose any tunnel, it will be destroyed. And no question that somehow, I don't know exactly how, but somehow part of what we found in Gaza was smuggled into Gaza from the Egyptian side of the border. We will have to find how and to learn all the details by interrogating the captured Hamas members that we have. And I believe that at the end of the operation, or towards the end of the operation, we will have better answer to this question. We know that it came from the Egyptian side of the border. We still don't have a clear answer how, or at least the majority how came the majority of the weapon system.
Arthur Stark brings up a quote from General Kohavi, the former Ramatkal, who apparently said, "It can take years to achieve complete victory in Gaza, and there is no way to bring back the hostages without pausing the war for the time being." Do you agree with him on that?
I agree that it will take a long time to clean Gaza. We have an experience in the West Bank. In the West Bank, the operation in 2002 was 1 month, and then to clean it, to reduce 99% of the casualties from terrorism coming from within the West Bank took us 4 years. And only then we succeeded to reduce the number of casualties by 99%. Still, 1% was there. The same is about Gaza. It will not be so long, because the character of the operation is totally different in Gaza. We are much more aggressive, and we destroy more facilities during the operation itself. It will take probably after Rafah another 6 to 12 months to what you are calling mopping up, and to clean the Gaza Strip from all the remnants of Hamas, the infrastructure on the ground and mainly under the ground. And then Gaza Strip will be like a big Area A, in which there are no Israeli soldiers, but Israeli soldiers are coming in and out based on intelligence. But to get to this situation, we need time. I'll give you one example from the north. The north, the dismantling of Hamas was the first step of the war. Then we had a few weeks of mopping up, and we went out. And after months in which we didn't have forces on the ground in the north part of Gaza, we learned that Hamas is going back to the Shifa hospital, grouping and regrouping, and try to build a new kind of a system. We decided to destroy it. To reach Shifa at the beginning of the war took us 2 months, and we need to make the operation by 2.5 divisions. The operation in Shifa, after the mopping up and evacuating the area, from the order to cross the border to the minute that the hospital was encircled by tanks, was less than 30 minutes. And no one shot even one shot on these forces going from the Israeli border into the Shifa. Why? There was not a system. They didn't have the surveillance and people that can call them, guys, they're crossing the border, let's do it, that and that and that, and someone will give orders and someone will obey the orders. No system. So they got to the 2.5 battalions go to the hospital without having even one exchange of fire in their way. When they reached the hospital, there was exchange of fire, and 3 Israelis had been killed, and so on and so forth. We killed more than 200 terrorists there. But the whole area between the border and Shifa was empty from Hamas organized opposition. And this is the situation that we want to achieve in Gaza. Parallel to what we have in Area A. Today, there are no Israeli soldiers in Jenin, not at all, not even one. If during the night we will receive an intelligence which the commanders on the ground will say, okay, this information is strong enough, good enough, and we have to go in, we will do it. The same will be in Gaza after the day after.
Turning to the north, General, maybe I'll again combine two questions, one from Julio Messer and one from Michael Kassan. Do you favor territorial concessions to get a deal to end the current fighting with Hezbollah? And if there is a deal in the north that results in Hezbollah withdrawing from the border, what can prevent them from returning to the border whenever they choose?
For the first question, it very much depends what concessions are needed. I know that there are some areas in which the American experts think that Israel crossed the line as it should be. And in this case, it's very easy. Yes, we will have to give it back. And there are areas in which we are still arguing. And whenever it is area or point or part of an area, which according to the Americans, it should not be ours and under our control. And we will be convinced that this is the professional view that should be adopted. It will be very clear. About the second question, this is the main question for the future. And I believe that Israel, even if we will have an agreement, will not have any choice in the future but to initiate a preemptive war. The biggest mistake of Israel strategically was that we didn't keep the alternative of preventive war on the table. We lost it somewhere. By the way, most of the democracies around the world lost it. To wage a war became a sin in the West, and no good wars was the slogan. No, there are some good wars in which you destroy the ability of your enemy to be stronger and to attack you in the future. And if there is clear one lesson that we should draw from the 7th of October, is not to let the beast on the other side to be too strong.
Well, thank you very much, General. That's a very sobering lesson with which to end. But I appreciate your time and your insights this afternoon.
So, the problem is how you adopt it, and more problematic how you implement it when the world, including the United States of America, think that that there is no legitimacy to such a war. And I think that there is more than legitimacy. There is a need to do it.
So, very, very sobering thought, particularly in light of the tensions that are already evident in the U.S.-Israel relationship over the Rafah operation and the need for U.S. support if there is, as you say, a big war with Hezbollah. All topics that I am sure we'll continue to discuss in our future webinars. So thank you again, General Amadror. Thank you to all those of you who joined us this afternoon. As always, you can find our latest analysis and updates at jinsa.org. And look forward to seeing you on next week's update. Thank you very much, General.
Thank you very much. The next week is the 76th birthday of the State of Israel,
Yes.
and I hope that the next year will be easier for Israel, and Israel will get out of this year stronger and with all the capabilities to flourish in the future. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you, General, and we all certainly share that wish. Have a good evening, and thank you everyone for joining.